Okay. A few of you have asked for a video concerning conflict in the workplace and how to handle that. So let's get into that, all right? The truth of the matter is conflict is unavoidable. It's gonna happen. So you're gonna have to be able to reason through and think through before these things happen exactly what you're going to do when that situation arises. Now, I'm not talking about thinking through a script in your head because as soon as somebody else in the conversation adds in a line into that script, the whole script goes out the window, and you're stuck fumbling for words. What we do need to think about, though, is how we are going to maintain ourselves and we are going to act and react in a given situation. And we can think of those things beforehand. We can determine beforehand how we are going to act and how we are going to react in any given situation. Some things are within your control. Uh, your opinions, for example, is within your control. Your pursuit, what your goal is within your control. Your desire, uh, how you want things to turn out, is within your control. Your aversion, what things really throw you off, are within your control. In a word, whatever is within your own thoughts or your own action, those are within your control, and those you can do something about. What you can't control is others, but you can control about how you respond to their actions, to their words, and that's important. Really, we need to face conflict as an opportunity and an opportunity to negotiate order from chaos. Very often, there are people within our workplaces that, for better or worse, bring their chaos to work, whether their husband got upset with them that day on the way to work, or their wife threatened them with something, or their kids caused trouble, or their work or their van broke down on the way to work. Whatever happened, they're bringing that chaos with them. And if they're not good at managing their own emotions, if they're not good at managing their own interpersonal challenges, they're going to put that on the whole work scenario. And so it's important for you and I, as we think about dealing with the things at work and the conflict at work, to realize that some of the things that show up at work, yes, need to be addressed, but they didn't start at work. Okay? Those things did not begin at work, and so you're not going to be able to solve them at work. Boundaries matter. You have to know how to set boundaries in order to get through the conflict. And in order to set boundaries, you can't be afraid of conflict. Dr. Glover, the man who wrote No More Mr. Nice Guy, said, "He who knows how to set boundaries and is not afraid to work through conflict." The person who is integrated, that's the word that Dr. Glover uses. The person that is integrated knows how to set boundaries and how to work through conflict. Now, that's an important distinction. The distinction is this: instead of saying to ourselves, I am going to conflict this guy, I am going to confront him, I am going to deal with him, um, instead of thinking that way, we need to start thinking of, how do I work through the conflict that either has come my way or the conflict that I know is going to arise when I have to confront this situation or this individual. We have to avoid patterns like skirting the hard conversations. Instead, we need to get clear in our minds about what our needs are, what we need to get out of the conversation, and be able to voice those needs respectfully and firmly. Very often, when we go into a situation, it's important for us to set expectations for that conversation right off the bat. To be able to say to the person that we are talking to, this is where I'd like to go with this conversation, and this is the end of that conversation that I would like us to get out of it. This is my goal for this conversation. It's important for us to be able to take ownership of the conversations that we have and not just be a victim of those conversations. Very often we walk into a conversation, not really having a plan, not really having a goal in mind in that conversation other than to straighten that other person out. That doesn't always work very well. Have a goal, have a plan, and not necessarily what you are going to say, but what outcome do you want from that conversation? What are you going to eventually, what do you want the other person to get out of that conversation as well? You see, what we have to understand is what Jocko Willink says in one of his videos. He says, it's not what you preach, it's what you tolerate. And that's the case with conversations and conflict at work. It's not so much what we tell other people to do or tell other people what we want from them. Very often the problem becomes what you and I choose to tolerate from that other individual. And when we choose to tolerate, uh, maybe not abuse, but small instances of disrespect, then that's what we're going to get. More and more of those small instances of disrespect and more instances where people are ignoring us, more instances of where people are not uh, living up to what they said they're going to do to begin with, and certainly not living up to our expectations of them. If someone's undermining your team, you can't sweep it under the rug. Unfortunately, you have to call it out. You have to enforce the standard. You have to lead by example. And leading by example very often means not only doing the hard thing that you expect others to do, but it's also a matter of you dealing with conflict by example and calling people out in a clear, kind, and consistent way. You can't be one way with one person and another way with another person. Otherwise, you're going to get charged with hypocrisy pretty quickly. But if you want to handle conflict well at work, let them see that you are dealing with person A just the same as you are dealing with person B and expecting the same from each. If you expect the same from each and you hold each to the same standard, then people will rise to that expectation. But make sure you set expectations well in advance. Don't bring expectations on people. Don't say, well, I expected you to be here 15 minutes early. Well, okay, if you didn't tell them that, you have what's called a covert contract. You've got something in your mind that you have expected of them that they're unaware that that expectation is on them. It's just something in your own mind. Make sure you express expectations very clearly, upfront, and well beforehand. That way people know what is expected of them, and so they're not thrown off, right? They don't walk into a situation and get blindsided thinking that they're doing a good job when they're not meeting the expectations that you have for them. The truth of the matter is, freedom requires boundaries, simply discipline. Uh, Freedom for you and the other people within your workplace requires you setting boundaries for yourself, even if you're the employee, and also setting specific guidelines, guideposts, markers on a boundary to show the people that you are serving, and that's really what leadership is serving others. Show those people kind of where the boundaries are within which they can operate well and clearly and freely. But the other part of handling interpersonal conflict at work is managing our own tongue. The writer of a book called Proverbs, the King Solomon of Israel, he said, a gentle tongue turns away wrath, but harsh words stir up anger. That doesn't mean that we need to be a pushover. That doesn't mean that we need to be a doormat. But we do need to control our mouth to a certain point, or to the point at which we know what we are going to say and we know how we are going to respond to people. You see, gentleness is not holding in conflict, but instead, gentleness is being able to have a controlled speech that isn't on the one side flying off the handle, but on the other side isn't crumbling into a puddle of tears when somebody says something to us that is negative or even mean. We need to approach friction with calm speech that diffuses more than volume ever will. Sure, you can raise your voice, you can curse and swear and do all that kind of thing. It's not going to accomplish what you want it to. But if you can keep a calm, even, consistent speech that is firm, that will do more to diffuse the situation than anything else will, especially if the facts are on your side. Yeah, make sure you have a case that can be made logically before you enter into conflict within your workplace. If you're wrong, just admit that you're wrong, apologize, and move on. Rectify the situation. In classic literature, a fellow by the name of Thomas Crumb says the quality of our lives depends not on whether or not we have conflicts, but how we respond to them. The truth of the matter is, you're not going to avoid conflict. Conflict isn't optional. The good news is growth comes from conflict. If you can handle conflict well, you can be the person in your workplace that people go to bring order out of chaos. You can be the person in your workplace that people look up to and respect, rather than saying, yeah, every time something strange comes up, every time there's just a little bit of friction, they blow up, they fly off the handle, they walk out of work, they don't talk to the secretary or don't talk to their boss politely for 3 weeks after that. You don't want to be that kind of person. But if you can handle conflict well, you can learn from that conflict every time. A post-mortem on conflict is very helpful and very useful because it shows us what we need to do better and what worked and what didn't. And that's good information. Okay. We need to start building a database of information uh, regarding our employers, our employees, our coworkers. No, I'm not talking about a blackmail list. I'm talking about building together a list of information in our minds about how people respond to certain stimuli. In other words, if you know this person falls apart when someone is stern with them, well, you know then maybe you need to not to be quite so stern with them. Or if you know that this person will not even pay any attention to you unless you be firm, then you know you have to be firm with that person. Or if you see that this person will not change their behavior at all unless there are consistent and real consequences, then you need to go into a conversation with them with real consequences that you're willing to be consistent about. Let's talk about a few practical steps. First of all, self-reflection. Ask yourself, what's in my control in the situation? Our words, our tone, our timing, all those things are our thinking going into the situation. All of those are within our control. The rest we need to let go of. We cannot control the outcome of any conflict. To try to do so is simply foolish. What we can control is our own honesty, our own integrity, our own needs and our own boundaries within it, or expressing our own needs and setting our own boundaries within a given situation. Those things we can control. And so we need to kind of do our own work in our own mind to understand what what we're wanting out of the situation and how we can control ourselves going into that in order to try to get what we're looking for. Then boundaries. Say what we need, but not in a way, I need this from you. Let's start a little softer. Kind of the idea of I'm uncomfortable when this happens, or I can't get done what I need to in a work day when this happens, or saying something like, can we agree to do X, Y, or Z? Those approaches will work better. Don't don't cave to approval seeking. Don't try to, whether it's your boss, a coworker, or an employee, trying to get their approval and trying to get their sign on in any given situation isn't necessarily where you want to go. Where you want to go with this is this is the best scenario we can get working together and get them not necessarily to approve of you, but to approve of the course of action that you are proposing. Because if you can propose a course of action that is mutually beneficial, then you will be more likely to get what you want ultimately. But here's the trick. One man well said, you can't expect what you don't inspect. And you have to hold people accountable. You have to be able to say, look, we talked about this, didn't we? Uh, if you've had children, you know that without some form of accountability, the kids run wild. If you don't enforce the rules, they're going to do whatever they want to do. You have to address behavior early, not later. Waiting till things are at a fever pitch will only cause you trouble. Will only end up getting you kicked in the rear. What you really need to do is deal with the small things, not being nitpicky or antagonizing toward people, but dealing with the small things that you know add up to the big thing. And if you can do that, if you can deal with small behavior and set expectations in small behavior, then you will be able to, over time, address the big things. Or in better terms, you will be able to avoid the big things if you address the small things. Choose words that are calm. It's important. Uh, choose words that if not diffuse the situation, at least they help mold the situation into what you want it to be. Nobody is served when you or the person you're talking to flies off the handle and accusations fly and people start raising their emotions more and more. You don't want that. You see, conflict at work we said is unavoidable, but also it really isn't a problem. It's a challenge, but it isn't a problem because you and others are at work and you're coming from different backgrounds, different mindsets, uh, different socioeconomic situations, different cultures often. And so, because of that, there's always going to be some measure of conflict. But see it as a challenge for you to grow personally and professionally, a chance for you to work through things with others, a chance for you to exercise your interpersonal skill set, and maybe even a chance to make and grow a friendship. Uh, Even in friendship, there is conflict. And if you don't understand how to work through conflict, uh, it, whether it's at work, at home, or in friendships, or out on the golf course, you're going to have to, if you don't understand how to work through conflicts, you're just going to make things worse and worse. Know where to focus. Okay. Focus on you first. Then you'll be able to focus on dealing with the challenge at hand. Have the courage you need to assert your boundary in a kind, consistent way. Demand ownership and discipline, and then trust that ownership and discipline, especially if you're the boss. Confront the chaos with strength and integrity. I'm not saying anger and integrity. I'm not saying meanness and integrity, but internal strength. And if you don't have internal strength, well, we'll talk about that in another video. But you need to find the internal strength within yourself. No, not to back into someone else like rams coming at and hitting each other, but the internal strength and integrity to deal with the situation upfront and consistently. Quite well. Speak the truth with love and lead with courage. Quite well. Speak the truth with love and lead with courage. If you can do those three things, then you will be 10 steps ahead of anyone else in your workplace that sees that sees conflict as a potential way of advancement. We certainly don't want to go that direction. We certainly don't want to see this idea of, if I can get this person mad and I can get them to fly off the handle, that'll make me look good to everybody else and I'll get a promotion. No, we don't want to look that way. And we don't want to be seen that way. Because that kind of conflict creation for an end goal, people can see through that a mile away. And so what we're trying to get across here this afternoon is just that idea of handling conflict is, you're going to have to do it. You're going to have to learn how to do it well. And if you can learn how to do it well, dealing with these things that we've talked about in this video, then you will be an asset to your business, an asset to your home, an asset to your community. Because every one of those places always needs someone that can handle things with a cool head and with a positive end goal for everyone in mind.